question actually for DELE. Basically, the question is because I've seen a couple of videos regarding a colonial administrator, Harold Smith, and I just wanted to know whether DELE has more insight regarding how the British were able to compel Nnamdi Azikiwe to do a deal with the North. If that story is true, just give me some more information. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. Well, it's a good question because the book that Harold Smith's book, which hitherto or up to now has not been published, is being published now. Is due from the printers within the month, and when it is out, it's titled "The Harold Smith Story," and it provides the full details. But the summary of it is this: Azikiwe was made by the Brits and then unmade by them.
Okay.
And the what I mean by that is this: that his father, this is from his own biography, autobiography, called My Odyssey. His father was an administrator in Lugard's office in Zungeru. Azikiwe, brilliant young man, raised in the north, born and raised in the north, then schooled, early school in Yoruba land, and then finished off in these later teens, exposed for the first time to life in the East in order to learn the Igbo language. So he spoke all three languages in the end fluently. He went to America to pursue his studies. At that point, he was dynamic and super confident. Bear in mind, he was the first of a generation of Easterners that were now going to university. When he finished his studies in the mid-1930s, as we've all been there, we're graduating, our hopes are high. He had a master's, he had been lecturing in the States, he studied political science, he had every confidence of a great life ahead, especially when independence was now, in the air, as it were. So he had everything to look forward to. Unfortunately for him, because he had studied the most dangerous subjects at that time. Bear in mind, Nigeria was under colonial rule. The most dangerous subject you could have studied is political science. And the worst place you could have studied that subject was the United States of America. Why? Because the USA was the first breakaway colony from the British Empire. And you go studying political science in that territory, and then you're coming back to Nigeria to work. You are dangerous. So what he found was that every job that he applied for, there was no opening. His spirits broke to the point that, having struggled so hard, and his biography is a great read, I recommend it to everyone, and you see the life of somebody who really was ready to do any job in order to secure success in life. Not just for himself, but with an eye on his father who had supported him. But the spirit is broken when every job you apply for, there's no vacancy, or there's rejection, or there's no response to your letters of application. That was the experience that he had, to the point that, and again, this is his own story. Nobody is making it up about him. He had given up on life, and he attempted to commit suicide in America. He was lying on the railway track, and a train was approaching. And it was at the last minute that a Samaritan pulled him from the tracks, took him to a YMCA, where they gave him accommodation, and effectively picked him up again. Now, when you've got to that point where you're ready to end your life, as he was, you're vulnerable. And it was at that point that, through the network of those who took him from that railway line and saved his life, that he got into the clutches of the Marjorie Parham's, Lugard's biographer, such that when he was due to return to Nigeria, he was invited to pass through London, and he ended up visiting Parham and her friends, spending time with them before sailing back home. Now, they fixed him a job in Ghana in the first instance. That's where he got his experience as a printer. He was working for a publication called the Morning Post. Now, the Morning Post was a colonial publication. I say that because it had branches in all those colonial territories like Hong Kong. There was the Hong Kong Morning Post and the Morning Post in other territories. So that's where they fixed him a job. That's where he got his publishing experience. But by this stage, they've got close to you. They've opened opportunities to you. But it went beyond that. As Harold Smith explains in his book, The Harold Smith Story, he explains that the bank that Zeke was running, that it was insolvent because he had gone into politics, the NCNC. Funding political parties is always a challenge in every territory. That's what dictates the outcome of your political campaign much more than anything else. And funding was a challenge for those parties, especially the radical parties. And the bank that he was running was now insolvent, and he had to have taken unorthodox access to other sources, which the British, through their intelligence network, were aware of, and such that he was basically given an option that he either goes to, they had enough evidence on him for him to go to jail, and the alternative was to toe the line. So it was actually a prison or the presidency. But bear in mind, the presidency at that point was not the presidency as is now, because we were then operating a parliamentary system. And so the president was more like the Queen, the head of state. Is a nominal, figurative, rather than executive power. The real power was the prime minister position. And so that's how NCNC was leaned upon, rather than form an alliance with the Action Group, which was the natural alliance. The Igbos and the NCNC had nothing in common with Ahmadu Bello's feudal north. But that alliance came about not because the Igbo people themselves wanted it, but simply because the man who had been made their leader, and I say that deliberately because even in his autobiography, Azikiwe, having returned to the country around 1937, he explains, in fact, his first tour of Eastern Nigeria was 1934, before he went to Ghana. And the tour was organized for him. Everywhere he spoke, large crowds had been mobilized for him. And at the end of each talk, according to him, there was always a large bag of money that had been raised for his campaign. So this is what I mean by him having been made by the Brits. Job fixed in Ghana. When he comes back, somebody who was on the verge of committing suicide just a few years before, who was in a almost penniless state, all of a sudden he's able to come back from Ghana after just about 2 years of working there. He's able to establish a printing press and to establish the West African Pilot. This was all part of his the way that he had been geared up to play the role as the leader of the East, and to play it in competition against the Western region. Because as I explained earlier in the discussion, remember, Eastern region and Western region had been one Southern Nigeria up until 1st of April 1939. There was no Eastern region, there was no Western region. It was just one South, just like the North, one North. You are Northern Nigerian, you are Southern Nigerian. But it was 1st of April 1939 that in this, what had been Southern Nigeria was now divided into Eastern region and Western region. And Zeke had been groomed to be the king of the Eastern region in competition with Aolo, who had emerged as leader of the Western region. And I choose those words deliberately. One had been groomed and the other one had emerged. The Brits provided no support to Aolo. He did his own campaigning to get to his position. In contrast, and this is Zeke's own evidence, that the stage had effectively been prepared for him to become king of the East. So that's how he emerged. But as I said, the full story is out this month in the book, The Harold Smith Story. You'll be able to read it all for yourself.
Wow, impressive.